Welcome to Water, the podcast. If you work in water, whether it's treatment, distribution, wastewater, or management, this podcast is for you. In each episode, you'll hear a unique story and gain fresh insight from a colleague inside the water industry. Here's your host, filmmaker and municipal operator, John Parsons. Enjoy this episode.
Welcome to Water. I'm John Parsons. I want to thank you for joining me. I've got an amazing, interesting person to talk to this morning. I've got James Dinius, who is the lead operator at the Bismarck water treatment plant. So James, welcome to Water, the podcast.
Thank you, John. It's good to be here.
Well, I thank you for coming along today. This is really great. I was absolutely intrigued the first time we met when I was actually filming a instructional television show in your lab at the Bismarck water treatment plant, and you took us through and you showed all of the processes of testing that you did, including I believe it was coliform bacteria testing you were doing as well, and turbidity, and all these names were new to me then because I wasn't in the water industry at that point. Now I find myself as a water operator doing titrations. So it's kind of interesting to come back and talk to you after this period of time when I myself have come into the water industry.
You know, I didn't realize I was such an influential guy. We had one conversation and you entirely upended your career and went to municipal water treatment. I got to say, that's actually kind of a nice feather in my cap, if I do say so.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Yeah, I do think it's amazing. I think about, quite often when I'm doing my titrations, I'm working with, turbidity testers and stuff like that. And I think, man, yeah, that's what James was doing right there. So there you go. See, you didn't even know how much influence you were having.
Clearly.
So, James, how did you let's talk about how you got into this business. How did you become a water operator?
The story's a little bit longer than I probably would be able to put on the air, but long story short, I started my professional career in medicine. I was a laboratory technician for the first several years. Eventually, I moved up to a laboratory manager position. Found that wasn't quite to my liking. I wanted something, just different. So I ended up going back to school. Got a process plant technology degree. Found that I really enjoyed the water treatment portions of it, whether that be membrane or conventional lime softening. I just found just a liking to it. Eventually, I took a job with a steam generating plant out of Grand Forks and worked a lot with the boilers there. But towards the end of that career, I started working more with the water treatment. A position became available at the city of Bismarck. I jumped on it. I was lucky enough to be picked, and thus began my official career as a water treatment operator.
Wow. So how did you end up getting into the lab, James? I mean, when I met you, what was your title when I met you? You were certainly running the lab, but what was your job title at that point?
So I was the laboratory manager at that point.
Okay. And so that meant that and what I found interesting looking back, I didn't kind of realize the significance of all of that when we would do it, when you were showing me all of that. But what I found interesting is thinking about it. I mean, most water operators or most public water systems have to send their coliform tests out, but you were doing your own in-house there.
Yeah, we're very fortunate here at Bismarck Water Treatment. We have a really great lab staff. We actually have Sandy Young. She is the new laboratory manager. She does a great job. She's been a tech here for about a decade. We got Sandy and we got Emily and Becky as well. Two great techs. Because we are certified through the state and several of our instruments, we're able to run those tests in house, which really makes things beneficial for us. It gives us a better process control of our plant, as well as eases some of the burden of having to collect, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly samples, having to process them and then get them sent over to the state lab. It does ease the burden quite a bit.
Yeah, that's for sure true. I mean, I work for a little tiny water system, and we have to send our tests in, of course. And even I work for a bigger water system, but we still have to send our tests in. So this is fascinating when I think about it, that you have all of that in house there. How many coliform tests a day do you have to do, or a week? What sort of schedule are you on there in Bismarck?
So basically, because we're dictated by size, the city of Bismarck has us running. We end up doing 20 samples a week. So we basically have a group A and a group B, and of course that's dictated through the state. They tell us, which sites they would like us to test, and we have some alternates in there as well. But for the most part, we end up doing 80 samples a month, and again, that's as dictated through the state. But we have pool A that gets done every other week. Pool B gets done every other week. Depending on if it's a shorter month or a longer month, if it's got 5 weeks or 4, that does dictate a little bit as to when samples are grabbed and how many per week. But for the most part, it's pretty much 20 samples a week. And again, that's going to be like one of the lab techs, Sandy, myself. There are a couple of water treatment operators who have been trained in the laboratory setting as well, so they also can go grab those samples and collect them for us as help out status. So yeah, again, it's busy work, but thankfully we have great staff who's able to do it, and yeah, I can't say enough good things about it.
Well, that's cool. I think those of us who have now learned to take coliform or bacterial samples, we don't dare breathe once we open the lid of the bottle, until the bottle's closed, just in case we breathe something that messes it up.
Oh yeah. As soon as you take that little cellophane wrapper off and you crack that lid, boy, yeah, you hold your breath. You kind of feel like Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom. There, you got to be real careful, because all it takes is one little whoops, and you got a bad sample at that point.
Yeah, that's exactly true. So then, of course, you now I understand now, because I've been taking operator exams and stuff. So I understand there's different tests. Which actual tests do you do for your bacteries there?
I guess in terms of, could you elaborate a little bit more on that? Oh, you mean what methodology do we use?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So the methodology that we use is we use the 100 ml vials with the ColAlert packets in there. Of course, the sample cup itself, the vial, has that dechlorinator already inside the vial. You add the ColAlert packet. You'd like to see everything nice and clear after a 24-hour period. Of course, that indicates that, hey, you don't got any coliform, you don't got any E. coli or anything like that. But of course, if you start to see that yellow coloration, hey, you got some problems. You better start looking into this. But so yeah, we use the ColAlert methodology.
Okay, and I remember that when I was in the lab, you looked at stuff under the black light. Do you always look at them under the black light, or can you actually tell before you have to put them under the black light whether they're turning yellow?
Well, to be very truthful, that comes with a bit of experience. If you got a sample that's clear, which they mostly always should be, you don't have to put it under a black light, because the way that ColAlert packet works, that color indicator, if there's a straw yellow, if it's whether it's Mountain Dew yellow or some sort of an orange, whatever, if you've got some form of coloration in there, you're going to want to put that under the black light, because if you have a coloration change, that means you got some form of coliform bacteria in there, because the ColAlert reagent is working with those bacteria to create that color. Then then when you put that sample under a black light, if it luminesces, it gives you that kind of iridescent neon coloration. That's really bad. That's specific only to an E. coli bacterium, and you got some issues there. But to answer your question, do you have to put it under the black light always? I would say good practice would be to always say yes, just because then you're covering your bases. But to be very truthful with you, if a sample is clear, that already indicates that it's negative. You don't have to take it to that next step to then put it under the black light. But it wouldn't hurt to do that, just to cover your own butt, I guess.
Got it. Wow, that's kind of interesting, and especially I think that's interesting for those of us who don't do that kind of lab testing, so we're not familiar completely with that. I mean, I was intrigued when I was in your lab at the time, and you showed me under the black light what it looks like, so I made a video about that, so it was fascinating. But
Sure.
James, so just sort of reflecting on the whole of the water industry issue with testing at the minute. I mean, since I've been doing this, and I've been doing this just somewhat year and a quarter or something like that, just over. And what it seems to me is that the burden for testing seems to be an increasing thing, especially with the lead copper. There's more and more things coming in down upon us on that level. Does that seem like that to you when you look at it, as you, however long you've been in the water industry? Does it seem like it's something that's grown, the burden for testing?
Well, I'll be hitting my 7-year mark here on April 2nd. So 7-year career here, coming up pretty quick. As for overall testing, if you're looking at it from just the perspective of a Bismarck water treatment operator, it hasn't changed much. Just because we're still doing our routine testing every 4 hours, chlorine, turbidity, we're doing our fluoride, we're doing our pH, we're doing all that kind of stuff. That hasn't changed almost at all since I first began. Outside of a routine operator position and going more back into that laboratory setting, you got UCM R5 coming up. We've got the lead copper rule revisions and everything. Yeah, things are changing. Obviously, you got that 90th percentile and everything. There's going to be some changes with the laboratory, whether it's more samples that are going to end up being positive, where when the lead action level was a 0.015, you had more things slip below that. But now that it's going to a 0.010, you might start having more samples that actually exceed that 90th. So that I do believe testing has increased, and I think it's going to go even further still. And of course, you've also got the lithium coming up and everything. I mean, and by all means, yes, it's more work, but I mean, the forefront of our job is to create compliant, potable water for whatever public water system that we are employed by. So really, yeah, it's more hoops to jump through, but it's our job to jump through them, and because no one else is going to be able to. That's where, we're the front line to help make sure that this water is safe for drinking, for everybody, ourselves included.
You touched on a very interesting point there. It's our job to do so. And I think that, I think that's one of the things that struck me is that as I've come into the water industry, we have a responsibility to make sure the water is safe for people. And that in the end, it seems to me that that's something that a person ends up taking pretty seriously.
I would certainly hope so. I mean, everyone that I work with here, we take our jobs very seriously. Of course, there's always a little fun to be had. I mean, we are essentially a pretty big, somewhat dysfunctional family, but we all, we get the jobs done, whether it's the maintenance staff working on pumps and, things like that, or instrumentation, whether it's the operational staff, keeping this plant pumping at all hours of the day. I mean, day and night, 24 hours a day, there's always someone here, whether it's management helping to keep us in line or help keep things smoothed out, or if it's the lab ladies, making sure that the samples are being collected in a timely, adequate manner, and just keeping in touch with any of our reference labs that we submit them to, or whenever they're doing testing in-house. So yeah, it's definitely a job that I wouldn't say it's for the faint of heart. There is a very serious responsibility to this position, but thankfully, with enough good training, with enough state and rural water support, as well as that of our peers, it's a job that I think as long as you come in with a serious attitude, you can do some real good benefit to whatever public water system that you happen to work for.
Yeah, I can't say enough about the help that I've received coming into the industry, James, from the North Dakota Rural Water, from other colleagues working in the water plant. I mean, people have been tremendously helpful and want to see you succeed, want to help you learn the things that you need to learn to do the job. So I have to say that in terms of as an industry to join this industry, it's been a very good experience joining the industry, because I felt that people cared and wanted to see success, but also care about their job.
Oh yeah, very much so. And to touch on your comment about people wanting to succeed, I can't agree more. Simply because there really aren't that many water treatment operators. I won't necessarily say it's a growing field, but let's be truthful with ourselves here. Our population in the United States is growing. I mean, there are very few places that are getting smaller globally at this point. You need water. Without water, you have no civilization. You have no cities or infrastructure. So we not only do we want to succeed, we have to succeed. And of course, it's maybe that's a little bit more grave of a tone than is normally crossing our minds on a day-to-day basis. But I think because someone like myself working in Bismarck water treatment, meeting someone like yourself working through your facility, or going to a conference and meeting someone out of, let's say, Williston, Jamestown, Grand Forks, Fargo, Dickinson, to name some of the bigger, municipalities. We exchange ideas. We talk, hey, you guys have this instrument, you have this particular piece of equipment. How do you guys run it? Or what are your issues? Have you ran into this or that? It's fun to just workshop ideas with other individuals. And even if they have no concept of maybe a particular piece of equipment that you're working with, they may have worked with something or someone in the past who has similar experiences, or something that's maybe akin to what you're working with. And they'll say, oh, if you look at this influent valve, or watch this or watch that, or if you adjust this, or there's so much help to be given, and all you have to do is just strike up a conversation. Because I every single water treatment operator and most maintenance techs that I've worked with or spoken with in the past, they're more than happy to share their experience. Because to be fair, how much of our work do we get to talk about outside of work? I don't see a lot of us running up and down the street, campaigning, saying that, hey, I'm a water treatment operator. And even if you did, most folks would kind of just give you a nod and say, oh, well, okay, thanks for your service, I guess. And they would just keep walking. So I think when we're able to shine some light on what we do with other people who also do it, there's a camaraderie that's found between all of us who are in the water treatment industry, and that's regardless of job title. So it's sorry, go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, they ask, well, you tell somebody you're a water operator, and they look at you and they go, well, what's a water operator?
It's funny, since I officially really broke into this field 7 years back, I myself fell prey to this. You just take water for granted. I go and turn on my sink so I can get a pot of noodles boiling. I flush the toilet. I go outside to water the garden or my lawn. I flip a switch and I got water. And to not oversimplify, but as I should. Why shouldn't I have water? It's always been there before. But the second you start getting, you get a little bit of low water pressure, or maybe the quality is wanting a bit, boy, oh boy, the realization is, oh man, if it wasn't for whomever is providing this, I wouldn't have a way to, to wash my clothes, to flush the toilet. I wouldn't have the ability to water my plants or my pets or myself. Like, it becomes a real problem. So, just knowing that, oh yeah, there's an entire field of people who are kind of behind the curtains. We're not exactly front and center. We don't get to be the folks shaking hands and kissing babies, like some front running politician. We're just we're doing our respective jobs kind of behind the scenes, to an extent. And again, if we do our jobs well, of course we get thanks from the public, we get thanks from our employers, but the calling card of doing your job well is you don't see anything from it. You don't get angry phone calls. You don't have people complaining about water pressure or water quality. You do your job well enough, you don't hear anything at all. It's when the quality starts to lack is when you start getting phone calls and emails and things like that. And again, it's just more. I can't give enough accolades to the people in this field. And I know there's a million other fields out there that are no different than the water treatment, but because I'm in the field, I'm a little bit biased to saying, hey, be sure to express gratitude and thanks to anybody in that water treatment field, because they're doing an amazing job, and probably not for maybe the thanks we should be getting, but it's also a job where you don't get into it because you want to get pats on the back every day. We do it because it's a wonderful job. You're doing a lot of good for the people, and it's a service that needs to be filled.
Yeah, I've come to share that bias, so I'm with you on that. Absolutely. I appreciate everybody I've met in this industry, and I, like you, they are doing a wonderful job. So, James, your job has changed a little bit now. You're the lead water operator at Bismarck Water Treatment Plant. How's your job changed, and what does that look like for you?
So there's still plenty of laboratory work to be involved, but it's more just routine operator work. That's going to be grabbing samples off of. So we use our traditional lime softening basins. That's going to be grabbing samples off of there, and that's more for process control. We're grabbing raw water samples so we can check what our water quality looks like coming into the plant. We're testing our finished water quality, making sure that everything's compliant, making sure that it's staying well within those parameters that we already have set. So as laboratory work goes, still doing plenty of that on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. It's just changed a little bit, where now my role as the lead operator, a lot of it entails training new operators, helping people get ready to do their testing, which you said that you're past your year, about a year and a quarter, which means you got a level 1 right around the corner for you there, John.
Actually, James, I just sat my level 1 yesterday. Hopefully I passed it. I got my level 1A last August. So I've got 1A in distribution and treatment, and hopefully I got a 1 yesterday. We'll find out soon.
Well, perfect. Well, hey, the plus side is from the experience that I've had, if you have an email within a couple of days, usually a good sign. If not, it takes a little bit longer, but hey, you can always reattempt. That's always the plus side there. So, and of course, there's always plenty of support. You've mentioned Rural Water previously. They do an excellent job. Do want to give a shout out, Chuck Mischel. He is retiring from there. Excellent individual. I can't say enough about that guy. He helped get me ready for my testing. He's helped several of my operators in the past get through their coursework, some of the mathematics, some of that. I mean, just awesome utility, or awesome resource to be used. Again, can't advocate enough for Rural Water. They do an amazing job. But yeah, so getting back to my positional duties. So in addition to training the newer operators just on the day-to-day operations of the plant, of course, it's my job to also work with the superintendent here at the plant, Ira Williams, and Jim Kershaw, who I believe was a guest previously on your podcast. Working with them on a day-to-day basis just to make sure that the plant is functioning well, whether it's small changes in chemical dosing, what pumps we may or may not be running, just literally all things like that. So my work went from purely just laboratory and working in conjunction with the operating staff and Ira and Jim, to now working as an operator in conjunction with that lab staff. So it's a bit of a change, but certainly one that, I guess in my opinion, broadened that field exponentially, which is truly what I really enjoy. It's nice. It's fine being confined to one particular area of a plant. It's fine to be confined to one particular area of expertise. But if I could be a James of all trades, that's kind of what I want to be. And this lead operator position allowed me to do that. And so I can't be more grateful. I can't be any more grateful than I am for the opportunity to practice at this position with the city of Bismarck.
Wow, that's fantastic, James. Yeah, I mean, I gotta join you in that shout out for Chuck Mischel. If it wasn't for Chuck, I don't think I would be in the water industry myself. So he's been a tremendous personal help to me, and of course, I'm going to miss him now that he's retired. And I'm still trying to twist his arm to come on the podcast here. Hopefully, we'll get him on, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll do our best. But yeah, he's been a tremendous help, and so I think it's fascinating to hear a little bit of your perspective in now having the sort of bigger perspective of being the lead operator and everything. So just for reference for people, sort of, winter, summer, what kind of, how many million gallons a day are you producing at Bismarck Water Treatment Plant?
So when I first began here, that was all the way back in 2018. When I first began here, I began in April. We were still technically what we would call winter flows at that point. You're talking about 4,500 gallons, maybe 5,000 gallons on a quote unquote hotter day, or warmer day, really. But I mean, you're looking at maybe 7 million gallons a day. And that's even if you sustain 5,000 gallons through the entire day, which we almost certainly didn't. Usually we are around that 4,500, 4,000 range, give or take. But when we got to that summer, that was a particularly warm summer. I can recall after having gotten through my training portion, gotten through my working with another operator beside me to ensure that I kind of had my probationary period behind me. I can recall going in to operate by myself. So one day in August, I forget the day, but boy, were we cooking. We were pushing, I want to say 30 million, 29 million out of the plant that day. I mean, we were just cranked. I think we were 22,000 gallons at that point. And yeah, it was a real spectacle. The summer hasn't really changed much here in Bismarck. Of course, Bismarck is growing. People are watering their lawn. So really, we're pushing pretty hard most any summer. It's the winters that have changed slightly. Again, winters when I started, 4,500, 5,000 was kind of the most that you'd run, and even then that was just situational. The last couple of years now, we've been definitely pushing that 5,000 to more like 5,500 range. So our daily production has gone up. It hasn't gone up exponentially by any stretch, but it's certainly an extra few million gallons here, over the course of a couple days. Every week, of course, is more than that. So we're definitely seeing increased production throughout the entire year, but more noticeably in the winter, just because, again, summer we're almost always cranked. So that's just summer is summer.
Yeah, that's a lot of water to be responsible for. I've been learning to. I had a little sort of solo on the skater, but I'm working alongside my colleagues, and my hats off to my colleagues here at Minot Water Treatment Plant just for helping me and training me and everything. But that's been huge, to be working the skater system. So when you talk about 30 million gallons, that's a lot of water. So that's a big deal.
It is absolutely. But it is nice, again, to go back to what you just said. You have that support. Can you imagine being thrown into a position you got to make 30 million gallons, or maybe for you with Minot, let's say 25 million gallons, 20 million gallons, and just getting thrown to the wolves, not having someone there to kind of help work you through the SCADA system, what to watch for, how the subtle nuances of each individual component and system. I mean, boy, if you want to talk about a daunting task, you want to run someone off, do that.
Yeah, that would be scary, wouldn't it? But as you say, the support coming into the industry has been fantastic, and I just want to say that to anybody who's thinking about water as a career. This support has been terrific. And James, perhaps we'll finish on that note, because I'm sure you're, like all people in the water industry, you have to recruit people. What are your thoughts? What would you say to somebody who's thinking about water industry? And just talk a little bit about that aspect of your. I'm sure you get involved with recruiting and training, so just talk a little bit about that.
Well, I guess the first thing I would say, regardless of where you're at in your life, if myself, I came from the medical field. I was already I was in my upper 20s by the time I actually came here. So that being said, it's not unfeasible to do that. So if you're looking at changing careers, but you're kind of waffling on, do I, don't I can't speak enough volumes on the positivity of water treatment. Again, you're doing a service to whatever municipality or water system that you're working for. And even if you're not in a public water system, you could be working for a private. You might be producing water for a power plant. You might be producing water for a refinery or anything like that. It's a great field to get into. For those of you who are a little bit younger, maybe 18, 19, 20-year-olds, maybe you're still kind of trying to decide, well, what career trajectory do I want to do? You're still getting your generals knocked out. Shout out to Bismarck State College. They have a wonderful water treatment program. They have a process technology degree. That's actually where I got mine through. That trains you in the water treatment production lines. It's relatively a short amount of work. I mean, you can do it in 2 years. You can be out of school in that time, and you're going to be headhunted for sure. I mean, there's just not a lot of water treatment operators out there, especially those with a background in education and water treatment. I mean, I'm not going to say that you're just going to automatically get a job anywhere, but boy, it does put you to the front of a lot of those interview panels and things like that, because you have familiarity with the instrumentation, you have familiarity with the pumps, you have familiarity with dosing and disinfecting water for different, whether it's a conventional plant, a membrane plant, et cetera, et cetera. It does give you somewhat of an advantage over some individual who maybe is coming from a different walk of life or a different field. You know, they may have a ton of mechanical experience, they may have a ton of operational experience, but again, you know, if you're looking at entering into the water treatment field, there really is no time like the present. And again, to reiterate, the field is not shrinking by any means. This field is only going to grow. Human population sizes, regardless of township, are going to go up. You know, there's just more and more people in the world, and that means there's more and more need for water. You know, looking at like places like California and some of the West Coast, you know, they're dealing with issues with all sorts of droughts. You know, you got issues like that going on. So they're looking at newer technologies, desalination and reclaim and things like that. There's all sorts of fields where maybe you don't want to necessarily get into the water treatment portion as an operator. You want to be more like an engineering aspect. You know, having familiarity as an operator, I can't imagine wouldn't hurt to go into an engineering field where you could say, hey, you know, I dealt with this as an operator. Yeah, these reclaim wells they're really touchy. You know, we have all sorts of groundwater saturation, this and this and that. I can't speak enough about the benefits of being a water treatment operator. So again, regardless of where you're at in your career, whether you're just getting into college, maybe you're still within your general portions of it, maybe you just got out of it, but you're kind of kicking around the idea of, well, where do I go? You know, what do I do? Water treatment is a fantastic option. You know, just the benefits are great. The work, while certainly can be laborious at times, I mean, you're providing a service for whatever municipality or whatever water system that you're working for. Most of those tools will be given to you. And if not, hey, guess what? You get to be part of the change that you could say, hey, you know, I would like to see this incorporated, or do we have possibly a budget for that? And of course, again, going back to our conversation, there's enough supportive individuals. I think if you could generate enough of a rational support for some idea, you know, you could, whether it's having to take it to a city commission, whether it's taking it to a director of public works, or however your infrastructure is structured, you know, there's routes to doing that as well. But yeah, water treatment as a whole, I can't say enough about it. I'm glad I came into the field, and I'm certainly glad that I get to do this on a day-to-day basis for sure.
James Dinius, lead water operator at Bismarck Water Treatment Plant. James, I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast, Water the Podcast, but I also want to thank you for inspiring me 2 years ago when I was filming in your lab, and here I am in the water industry. So I want to personally thank you for that as well.
Boy, I gotta say, it's nice to be told how influential you can be as a person. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So thank you, John. I appreciate that.
You're so welcome, James. Bless you. Thank you.
You have been listening to Water, the Podcast, with filmmaker and municipal operator John Parsons. Subscribe via your favorite podcast platform. If you'd like to be a guest, or if you need a film or video to communicate your message, find us at waterthepodcast.com.